Epithelia is designated by both number of layers and the shape of the cells that are seen within it. It covers the body, moist body openings and surfaces. It's found throughout the body, also covering organs. It forms the inner lining of body cavities, glands and gland ducts, lines hollow organs, and it's the outer layer of your internal organs, referred to as endothelium. Overall, epithelia protects, secretes, absorbs, and excretes throughout the body. Its designation is classified based on shape, which is squamous, flat cells, cuboidal, cube-like cells, and columnar, elongated cells. It's also designated by the number of layers, which is either a single layer or 3 or more layers of cells throughout the body, depending on the type of tissue that you're looking at as it's classified. Epithelia would be also referring to either a simple type or stratified type when you look at these number of layers. Simple squamous epithelia, for example, is seen in both the alveoli and the kidney glomerulus that you see here, around the glomerulus here, as a diffuser of the filtrate that's pushed out under hydrostatic pressure into this Bowman's capsule. This tissue is going to be a capillary bed, so the endothelial lining that you see here is under that pressure, and the pressure overcomes osmotic pressure in Bowman's capsule, and filtrate is pushed out into this area. Surrounding the glomerulus is kidney tubules. You also find made up of simple cuboidal epithelia. You also find simple cuboidal epithelia throughout the body, making up ducts of small glands, like is seen here in the picture here at the arrow. Simple cuboidal is a single layer thick with a centrally located nucleus, and it's found all throughout the kidney. Simple columnar epithelia, on the other hand, is a thick elongated cells, the nuclei of which are going to be shaped from the basement membrane in a columnar way, in a rectangular shape, often associated with goblet cells. It can be ciliated or non-ciliated. What we see right here is the brush border that's associated with it. Pseudostratified columnar epithelia that's ciliated is also going to appear striated, only it's really not. The double layer of cells that we see here is formed by the pushing together of that tissue from goblet cells. Stratified squamous epithelia is the outermost layer of our surface of our skin. It's in moist body openings, and it's found in the vagina, esophagus, oral cavity, and anal cavity, and it's going to be covering those areas for protection against abrasion. The epidermis is also seen here, and notice the outer layer of cells are dead versus the entirety of the cells alive in moist body openings. Stratified cuboidal epithelia is found in rare areas where we have large ducts of glands, and those ducts of glands are basically 2 to 3 layers of cuboidal cells thick. It gives more protection for those larger ducts, as the secretion is often harmful. The stratified cuboidal types are often seen also in the mammary glands and other areas of the body. Stratified columnar is more of a is also been referred to as a non-ciliated pseudostratified type, found in the male urethra and parts of the pharynx and airway as it leads into larger airways. The transitional epithelia is found in urinary structures like the bladder, ureters, and part of the urethra. It has several cuboidal layers of thick cells, about 5 layers thick, and when distended, it has the ability to pull tight across that basement membrane. The following slides will be gone over toward the end of this tutorial, and we will look at the detail of each type of these cells as we look at their lamina propria and basement membrane. As we look at glandular tissue associated with cuboidal type cells, glandular tissue is specialized to secrete substances into the ducts or body fluids found throughout the body. These glands can either be exocrine in nature, which secrete into a duct onto the open surfaces of the body, or endocrine and release directly to the blood. Unicellular glands that we would refer to here are goblet cells that release mucus under the surface in mucous membranes. These glands can be simple tubular, they can be simple or compound. Compound tubular glands are coiled tubes that are usually branched, and compound alveolar are irregular branched tubes with multiple sac-like outgrowths, like you see in the picture here. So there are a number of ways to designate exocrine glands as they release into their primary duct and into the onto the surface where they are associated with. These exocrine glands are differentiated by the way that they secrete their substances. If it's merocrine, it releases by exocytosis onto the surface of the skin or through its duct, like we see here. If it's apocrine, they lose small portions of their glandular product during secretion, and the surface of their cells have been pinched off. If it is a sebaceous oil gland, then the holocrine type is what we're referring to, and the entire cell dies off as it is sacrificed in the rupturing that occurs, and it disintegrates following this. This process is going to often be associated with the holocrine type with acne. From the ages of 10 to 40 years old, it's caused by blockage of sebaceous glands that build up from oil on the surface of the hair. Blackheads or oxidized oil, and inflammation often occurs on the surface of these pustules, and inflammation deeper into the pimples is going to be caused by irritation on the surface. When the oil breaks through the surface, we see that as a whitehead, and often steroid treatments or topical creams and cleansers would need to be used. Another disease associated with the skin is psoriasis. Rapid skin cell production causes dry, red, scaly, thickened skin and commonly affects all areas of the body. Merocrine glands are the most common of the glandular types, and these are going to release through a duct through exocytosis. As we look at connective tissue, this branching diagram illustrates for us the breakdown, and the connective tissue proper types are also referred to as fibrous connective tissues versus specialized types. General characteristics before the branch is that each of these we'll see a different components on the extracellular matrix. So within each of these types of connective tissue proper, we see fiber types that are laid down by fibroblasts, and these fibroblasts are differentiating, dividing, and becoming more mature fibrocytes. There are 9 different possible cells that would be associated with connective tissue proper within the ground substance and matrix, and those would be white blood cells, plasma cells, fibroblasts, fibrocytes, like we see here. Here's a nice electron micrograph of a fibroblast and macrophage, mast cells that release histamine and heparin, as well as the blood-related tissues or cells that we've already mentioned. Connective tissue is also going to have within its matrix 3 types of fibers. The collagenous white fibers are going to hold the structural area together. That's the most abundant protein in the body, made up of collagen for tensile strength, and it's found in loose and dense connective tissue proper, as is the elastin or yellow fibers that are made like spring-like, with a spring-like ability for stretch and recoil. The thin fibers of collagen are going to also be in the form of reticular fibers that form supportive networks within the tissues of blood-related areas, and that blood-related area would be like the spleen, lymph nodes, and the bone marrow found in the medullary cavity of long bones. So connective tissue overall is made up of a matrix which contains ground substance or hyaluronic acid coupled with a fiber, accumulation of 3 fiber types. As we look at the fibers themselves in this field of view and study them, we will see that each of these types of the connective tissue proper, loose and dense, are characterized as being fibrous. The specialized types that we see over here of cartilage, bone, and blood are going to essentially be modified types of the connective tissue proper. but still fall under the category overall of the type of the tissues that have been derived from mesenchyme, the embryonic cell that, or stem cell that gives rise to each of them. Here's areolar connective tissue with the abundant collagen fibers, a fibroblast laying down elastic fibers and collagen, and the white area of each slide would be made up of hyaluronic acid, the GAG, that comes together as the cell glue that holds it in place. Under the skin, cushioning the joints and surrounding organs, we would find adipose connective tissue. Each of these small compartments are adipocytes, and each adipocyte is deposited, or the lipid material within it is deposited by the bloodstream. This is a small artery with blood cells in its lumen and endothelial lining within it. As we can see here, there's also a vein that's with it, and this areolar connective tissue, the two-sided tape that is present here, is binding it to the adjacent tissue or to the fat. Another type of loose connective tissue would be reticular connective tissue. It's made of these branching fibers here that will function as the framework for internal organs and for blood-related tissues. The white cytoplasmic cells that you see here are mast cells. The small pieces of the fibers, like we see here, is the reticular cell, the fibroblast of this tissue. And the majority of the cells we're looking at here are white blood cells or leukocytes throughout. There would also be macrophages in that tissue. When we look to dense connective tissues, rather, instead of the loose connective tissues, we simply see the same arrangement of material. It's just more densely packed fibers throughout, and this can either be dense, regular, all parallel fibers in the same direction, or dense, irregular, with fibers in all different directions. This would be in the dermis of the skin, providing tensile strength in all directions. And the packed, thick collagenous fibers that are throughout would have some elastic fibers and the primary fibroblasts and fibrocytes laying things down. If there's an abundance of elastic fibers in the tissue, it's for stretch and recoil and a maintenance of shape of that structure. Cartilage, another atypical, or one of the atypical types, is seen here, and it's a rigid connective tissue with a hardened matrix that's had chondroitin sulfate added to that matrix, another GAG, to provide resilience to this tissue that is seen here. It's avascular, it's without nerve supply, and it would be each of these examples would be surrounded by dense irregular connective tissue that provides the nutrients necessary for these cells, chondrocytes that are stuck in lacunae and chondroblasts out on the edges.